eat afterwards, and they ordered a bottle of Macallan to the table because they all knew that this guy would only drink that. And he was like sharp as anything that was drink. So
Okay. L'chaim. Okay, Rabbi, so we left off 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, asking the question, dealing with the question of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans for Yetzias Mitzrayim, about the Jewish people somehow or another becoming that Merkava L'Shechina, returning back to that concept of being the embodiment of Hashem's design and desire and presence in the world. And it's important to put this in context of the dual missions that Moshe Rabbeinu is given in Parashat Shmos. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is given 2 missions. He's given 2 missions. And those 2 missions, neither of them seem relevant. We'll ask like this. What's the goal of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What's the goal?
Leaving?
Yeah.
They're going to stay slaves in another foreign country.
Well, first of all, it was fulfilling the promise made to Abraham.
Fulfill the promise. To do what? To
become a nation.
Create a nation. In order to do that, what do they need? They needed
a successful nation. That's key.
in another country. Yeah, sovereign, 100%. So, but the goal of Yetzias Mitzrayim is to leave Egypt. No, that's the goal.
Yeah, but also to go somewhere.
And to go to Eretz Yisrael. I mean, that's the destination. But when Hashem is speaking to Moshe at the burning bush, he gives him 2 missions. The 2 missions are, or 2 audiences. We'll say it like that. He has directives to 2 different audiences. Audience number 1 is the Jewish people. Says Hashem as follows. Ve'ata, now, hine tzakas b'nei Yisrael ba elai. The cry of the Jewish people has come to me. V'gam ra'isias halachatz asher Mitzrayim lo chatzim asal. And I see the pressure that the Egyptians are pressuring them. Ve'ata, and now, lecha, go. Ve'eshlachecha el Paro. I'll send you to Paro. Ve'otzei es ami b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim, and you will extract my nation, the Jewish people, from Egypt. Meaning, Moshe is supposed to go to Paro and demand, send my people. Is that going to work? No. Why is it not going to work?
Did you ever know any master that just gives up his slaves?
So it's worse than that.
And he wanted
Because-
to, but Hashem hardened his heart.
Because
That's later on, but that's later on.
Hashem says he's not going to listen to you. Meaning, however you want to deal with the question of Yediyah and Bechira and what Paro... Ultimately, Hashem says to Moshe, go and speak to Paro, and he's not going to listen to you.
Then why kill him first?
So why are you going? Right? That's just put that question out there for a second. Moshe is given this mission. Your job is to go and speak to Paro and tell him, let my people go. And Paro says, no, I will not let them go. And Moshe is like, yeah, I kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, but I think you have to also know that that's how he's going to respond.
Yes.
God knew what he would respond.
No, but Hashem tells Moshe, he's not going to listen to you.
you're starting the process.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Baruch Hashem. What's the process that we're starting?
I mean, you first show, although Hashem said it, first show that that's what he does, right? He says no, right? You have to show the beginning.
Okay. And then?
Then you've got the next step in the matras.
Well, where would you start if he didn't start there?
Well, okay. So hold this question for a second, because there is another part to the mission. What's the other part of the mission?
Allah doesn't need the guys doing it.
To engage with Israel.
Well, yeah. So there's the para facing mission, and then there's the Bnei Yisrael facing mission. The Bnei Yisrael facing mission is interesting. Moshe says, Hashem, Hinei anechi ba el Bnei Yisrael. I'm going to go to the Jewish people. Va'amarti lahem. I'm going to say to them, Elokei avosichem shalachani escha. the God of your ancestors has sent me to you. And they're going to say, what's his name? What am I going to say to them? And Hashem then explains, this is the name, yeah. And then Moshe complains again, and he says,
Does he ever use that name when he's...
no.
Only one. Yeah, sure.
I mean, Hashem says that to Moshe.
Yeah.
Moshe never tells that to the Jewish people.
Right. That's only that name said one.
Right. So then Moshe says, Hashem says to Moshe, what are you going to do? Lech, go. V'asavta es ziknei Yisrael. Gather the elders of the Jewish people. V'amarta aleihem, and say to them, Hashem Elokei v'seichem nira elai. Hashem, the God of your ancestors, has appeared to me. Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. The God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Leimar is saying, Pakod pakadti eschem. I've remembered you. V'esa'asu lechem mitzrayim, that which has happened to you in Egypt. Ve'omar, and you will say, I will raise you up from the poverty of Egypt. To the land of the 7 nations. To the land flowing with milk and honey. And as opposed to the Paro mission, which is stated to fail, this mission is stated to succeed. Says Hashem, V'sham'u lekelecha. They will listen to your voice. They're going to listen. That is going to happen. Uvata ata v'zignei Yisrael el melech Mitzrayim. And you, along with the elders, will go to the king of Egypt, v'amartem, and you will say, Elav, to him, to Paro, Hashem Elokei ha'ivrim nikra aleinu. The God of the Hebrews appeared to us. He happened upon us. Vata, and now, we're going to go a 3-day journey in the desert, and sacrifice to Hashem our God. Now, and then he says, Vani adati, and I know that I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, and not biyad chazakah, not with a strong hand. Meaning, the Jewish people will listen to you, the Zakanim are going to listen to you, but Paro is not going to listen. Here's the problem. Do the Zakanim actually listen to Moshe?
Well, they never make it.
They didn't make it, right.
They kind of like drop off and he turns around and it's in an arm.
Right. So that's how Rashi says at the beginning of Parakeh, right? That Moshe goes and he says, do you believe? And they say, we believe, right? And then they all show up to Paro, and Moshe goes, huh? What happened? Not there. Right? Not there. So what happened? What happened? How come they don't go?
Slave mentality.
Come on.
They're afraid.
Hashem says they're going to go. Why don't they go? So the Netziv says something devastating. The Netziv says, because Hashem promised Moshe, V'shamu lekelecha, they will listen to your voice. But Moshe wasn't the one that spoke to them. Aaron was the one that spoke to them. Which means that Aaron goes with Moshe because Aaron heard it directly from Moshe. Right. Meaning the Zakanim heard it third hand. Big difference between hearing it second hand and hearing it third hand. Meaning,
Was Moshe supposed to talk to them? No,
yes.
He didn't.
He said, I don't want to.
So he shouldn't be allowed into Israel.
Well, maybe that might be part of the problem.
Well, that was his original disagreement when Hashem told him to go speak. He said, I can't, and this and that.
Yeah.
All the excuses, like, God told you to speak, just don't do it.
Yes.
Is this considered one of his like chayts or something?
This was the Rishonim have a very hard time understanding Moshe Rabbeinu's behavior to a certain extent.
But I also heard that part of his problem was not only the impediment, his speech impediment, but the fact that he didn't present the way Aaron did.
Yes.
He might have been too tough or too abrupt, or he wasn't a great speaker.
Let's also understand.
Not because of the impediment, but he just wasn't a great speaker, whereas Aaron was the man of the people. I mean,
Let's also understand Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know these people. Right? He had nothing to do with them. At the age of 3, he was abducted into Paro's palace. He lived there until he was 20. He went out one day to see his brethren being enslaved, and a day later he's fleeing for his life.
Yeah, he never really belonged to both sides.
Ever.
Very interesting.
Ever. The Ibn Ezra deals with that question.
Yeah.
Ibn Ezra asks the question why it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it such.
Yeah.
That Yocheved is going to lose her baby to grow up I don't want to be too graphic, but But Rabbi Blachman would say it to us like this, like, you imagine like Paro was brought up in royalty. Paro was brought up in the palace of the most maneuverdic person at the time. Like he was growing up in Hugh Hefner's palace. Like it was a gross place in terms of like kedusha v'tara. Moshe Rabbeinu was exposed to like the worst things in the world living there. Like he wasn't subject to the inhumanity and brutality that was going on outside, but in terms of the tumah and the despicable like licentiousness and level of morality, like Paro was a bad man. He was an excellent politician, but a terrible human being.
And yet Yosef is the only one called Yosef HaTzadik because
Yes.
of his ability to resist.
Yes.
And Moshe is not given that, even though apparently he had more to resist than Yosef. Yosef's Paro wasn't, at least as far as we can tell, as bad as this Paro.
Yeah. Although Yosef in particular is somebody of particular external appearance. We don't know that Moshe Rabbeinu was somebody that the ladies were lusting after. Yosef was such a person. Yosef was incredibly good looking. I mean, we've discussed this before when we were talking about this in the Ramchal's Mamar Gula, that all of Bnei Rachel are physically impressive. That is part of Bnei Rachel. Rachel is the one that is Yifas Torah. She's beautiful. And Yosef is very good looking. And Shaul HaMelech, who descends from Rachel, is also head and shoulders impressive beyond everybody else. Esther Hamalka is Neses Chen Be'enei Kol Re'ah. That's also Bnei Rachel. Right? Bnei Rachel always are good looking. Bnei Leah less so, meaning the physical appearance for Bnei Leah is not the same.
It's more Jewish.
If you wish.
So you could say if someone's a good-looking kid, say, Bnei Rachel.
Bnei Rachel, right?
If they hop it, they're very learned.
So that's by Sfardim they give a bracha Ben Porat Yosef, right? I'm always glad, right? Ben Porat Yosef, right?
That's
Beautiful,
That's in Diathea.
right?
We think of Moshe as being isolated from, like you said, he wasn't on any side. But the thinking really about what you're saying with the experience in the palace and that being around that yuck or whatever, that might be even more isolating
Yes,
than the stuff we normally think about with Moshe.
yeah,
But did he know he was
And
Jewish?
then also, doesn't that make
Yes.
him the leader that maybe that's the
So that's-
the leader that
that's the Ibn Ezra's point. Ibn Ezra says that we don't really know. You can never know why Hashem orchestrated history the way that He did. So, but there's certainly two things that Moshe Rabbeinu gains. Thing number one that he gains is so he says the capacity to not be a slave. I mean, he knows tachsise malchus. He knows what it means to be royal. Moshe Rabbeinu knows what leadership looks like, whereas nobody within the Jewish people does. And the second,
That he was locked up for like 10 years and his wife got him. I forget the whole.
yeah, there's a long medrash like that. That Sefer Yashar has a whole medrash that Rashbam quotes, Parshas Chukas, which is a unique Rashbam. Rashbam usually doesn't quote midrashim, but the Rashbam quotes the long arichas of the medrash. Moshe Rabbeinu being Melech Kush for 40 years. There's a long story. But the other reason that the Ibn Ezra gives is because, ironically, it's much easier to be and Chazal used this phrase, but it's not a pasuk. It's not a Jewish phrase. A novi be'ira. You cannot be a prophet in your own hometown. Meaning, it's hard to be in charge of the people that you grew up with, right? Like it's very hard to take a leadership role with some of the chevra like remember you from second grade.
I was at your breast.
Right?
What to do.
Those people, right? Where I'm so proud of you, mashallah, right? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu needed distance in order to be, and you see that throughout the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu is to a certain extent aloof from the Jewish people. He loves them like crazy, and they love him like crazy. But he's different from them. And he is a different person, and they get it. And he's different even from his siblings. See, the Moshe and Aaron love him desperately, but they don't understand him.
So if that's the case, then if it was you and you have two choices, either listen to Moshe, what Moshe tells you, or Aaron, who are you going to believe more?
So
The
that
person that speaks your language?
100%. Meaning, Moshe saying, "I want Aaron to speak," or "I don't want to do this. I'm not the right person for this," is true. He's not crazy.
What I'm saying is, he didn't show up because Aaron said it, right? Not Moshe.
Meaning, they believed what Aaron said.
They didn't believe.
They did believe,
They didn't show up, though.
but they didn't follow through.
Right. I'm saying, Kal Vachomer, they would not have listened to Moshe. You would have said, at least, Kal Vachomer, they would have listened to Moshe.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point. The Netziv makes the argument, however, that Moshe, when he spoke with the veracity and with the authority of first-hand information. So, to the extent that the Netziv has this amazing chiddush that whenever Moshe spoke, he spoke clearly. Whenever he spoke to the Jewish people, but all the rest of the time he couldn't speak. Meaning, all of Moshe's speech to the Jewish people was like ki'ilu miraculous. And the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu was specifically chosen for this mission was because he was uncharismatic. Meaning the truth spoke for itself, not the presentation of the orator. Meaning Aaron had to make the case. Moshe Rabbeinu just had to state the facts.
It didn't work out.
He's just a total messenger.
That's it. Moshe Rabbeinu is like a kli. He's just, he receives and he puts it back. Aaron gives a drasha. You see this from time to time, that there's certain people that have the capacity to impart Torah with just, they say the words and it's clear. And then there's other people that give a drasha. You have to have pomp and circumstance and charisma in order to carry the message. There's a story that they tell, I think, in the early days of Eshet Torah. Somebody asked Reb Noach whether they had two. Exactly, that's you. Asked Reb Noach, there are two possibilities for a candidate to be a rebbe in the yeshiva. One was a serious Talmud Chacham, and one was an excellent orator. And they asked Reb Noach who they should hire, and he said, "You should hire the bigger Talmud Chacham." They said, "But he's a terrible speaker." And he said, "What brings Jews close to Judaism is Torah, not impressive speakers." Meaning, just give them the truth of Torah.
I would say that.
And the Torah is exactly right. And the Torah itself will impact people.
But it's better if you have both.
If you're gonna both, that's
The
better.
whole package.
100%.
Yeah.
But
not everyone can be right
someone
with
who
them.
doesn't care that much and is trying to get them closer to a great speaker
Can draw them in, 100%.
They'll
Yes.
see the light, so to
Yes.
speak. You know?
But
If you have
that
to choose one, that's the point.
the
You can't. It's a tough choice.
It's a tough choice. Yeah.
There are some great speakers that can just never look at my watch and keep going.
keep going right.
And there are some other speakers that can be tremendous. Tell me they can
It's very hard to listen to them.
And 10 minutes in, I'm going, I'm losing it. I just
Yes.
can't keep my eyes open.
Yes.
You know?
Not all speak.
That's my fault. That's my failure. But
So, but the point is that Torah itself is the thing that carries. The Torah itself is what carries. But nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu has this mission to go and speak to Paro, which he is told, "V'ani yadati ki lo yiten eschem melech mitzrayim la'alach." He's not going to let you go. And you are going to go speak to the Jewish people. Now, we know two things. We know that Paro's mission, the mission to Paro, is going to fail. It's designed to fail. And the mission to the Jewish people does fail. Which leaves you with the question, what's the point of Moshe Rabbeinu? You hear the question?
Why has Hashem sent him on a failure mission?
Two missions that are one that fails, either because of his failure or because of Aaron's failure, or because of the Jewish people's failure. Meaning, there's a mission to Moshe Rabbeinu that fails, and there's a mission to Paro that fails, and it's designed to fail. And I'm going to make it even harder for you, because we discussed this 2 weeks ago. That they didn't listen. Because from shortness of breath, from hard work, we learned the Meshech Chachma that the Meshech Chachma says that they couldn't imagine this world of slavery transcending into a world of freedom and sovereignty. Yeah.
Robert Moskowitz gave a good drush on this. It was the last Thursday night at Moses 2 Thursday nights ago.
Yeah, what's the chiddush?
It was a Kotzer Ruach, but that was from Moshe. Moshe was Kotzer Ruach, not
Yeah.
Israel. It
So
was a very interesting take on it because it's like he wasn't even like he was short of breath. He couldn't.
yes, but Pashtus is that they didn't listen. How does it impact the Yetzias Mitzrayim that the Jewish people didn't listen to him?
Think he could have gone out earlier?
Yeah.
Then
Maybe not. Maybe
I don't
not.
think so.
So this is the interesting question.
It seemed like there was
Paramount was who initiated the Makos.
Right. The fact that the Jewish people didn't listen, what did that do? What changed?
It made them see the nisim that Hakadosh Baruch Hu could perform.
Okay, Azma.
it's made it harder. It didn't seem so easy. It wasn't an easy thing to do. Oh, it's some this guy.
He gave something to reflect on that they made a mistake earlier on, but I'm not sure.
Did it change anything?
He probably made them more hopeless.
Pasuk says, "Vayidaber Moshe ken al bnei Yisrael." Moshe said all of these things to the Jewish people. V'lo shomu el Moshe, they didn't listen to Moshe mikotzer ruach me'avad kasha, from shortness of breath and from hard labor. And what if they would have listened?
Still couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Like,
Nothing would have changed, right? Says the Svarna, everything would have changed. Everything. Everything would have changed. How? Says the Svarna, it's a very important Svarna. V'lo shama el Moshe, they didn't listen to Moshe. Says the Svarna, lihisbonin b'chol zeh, to understand all of these things. Meaning they didn't listen, they didn't internalize what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them, remember we get that mashal of like the Sudanese refugee that's told, you're going to get like a PhD full ride to, Harvard School of Divinity. You're gonna have an amazing career. You're gonna be, the most brilliant kid on the block, and you're gonna have everything taken. Like you're gonna be somebody. They didn't listen to Moshe. To listen to this, Be'inyan, with the matter of Sheyiftechu b'Yishuas Hakel Yisbarach, that they would trust in the salvation of Hashem, ve'yachshaveh lahem tzedakah. Now that's an interesting phrase. Ve'yachshaveh lahem tzedakah ki inyan be'Avraham. Like what happens to Avraham. What is that talking about? Ve'yachshaveh lahem tzedakah ki inyan be'Avraham. So this one is encoding something important here. What's going on here? What does it say about Avram? Ve'yachshaveh lo tzedakah. It's considered to him charity, righteousness.
Yitzchak, the birth of Yitzchak.
So more than that.
not having to kill them.
The pasuk says as follows.
Maybe when he lied about Sarah, who Sarah was, no?
So he says, Vayomer Avram, Hashem says to Hashem, Hein loy nasati zara, you have not given me a child. Vine ben beisi yareshesi, and my household will inherit me. Meaning, Eliezer will inherit me. Who's going to inherit me? I don't have the ability to pass on this mission called monotheism. V'hinei dvar Hashem elav leimar, and the word of Hashem came to Avram saying, Lo yirash chazeh, this one will not inherit you. Ki im asher yitzei mime'echa, rather one who will come forth from you, who yirashecha, he will inherit you. Meaning you will have a son, you will have a child that will come from you. And he takes him outside. Vayomer, he says, Habeit na hashamayim, and look up to the stars. Count the stars. Im tuchal isbarasam, if you can count them. Vayomer loy ka yezarecha, and he says, so will be your children. Vehemin b'Hashem, and he believed in Hashem. Veyachshaveh loy tzedakah, and it was considered to him tzedakah. What does that mean? It was considered to him tzedakah. Says the Svarna here.
Someone who may not necessarily be deserving of it.
So let's understand what the Svarna means by this phrase.
Where was it said? Ki Yitzchak ki kara l'chazara. Was that later on?
That's
already?
later.
Okay.
That's later. Once he's had Yitzchak.
Is the thing that says tzedakah, is that in the pasuk or is that
In the pasuk. That's the pasuk. Ve'achshaveh lo tzedakah. Right? It was considered to him tzedakah. What does that mean? It says the Sforno here. Ve'achshaveh lo tzedakah. Akel yisbarach chashav zeh habitachon by litzedakah u'schus la'Avram. Hashem considered this bitachon, this trust that Hashem, that Avram has in Hashem, this unquestionable faith. If Hashem says so, it's going to happen. This is tzedakah, meaning this is a check mark as a merit for Avraham. Meaning Hashem sees the emunah that Avram has in Hashem and says, good for you. And it is important, says the Sforno, to point out that when Avram is told afterwards that you will inherit the land of Israel, what does Avram say? Bama edaki irashena. How do I know I will inherit it? Sforno gets rough here. He says, Lo chazar bai me'emunasa klal. He didn't return back from his emunah. He didn't go back. She'im hayachen lo hayasa emunah nechshavas lo tzedakah klal. Then that would not have been good for him at all. Meaning then it would have rolled back his emunah in Hashem. And then all of this tzedakah would have been forgotten, meaning Avram would have rolled back from his emunah in Hashem. Nevertheless, there's this Sforno later, that because Avram asks him, how will I know? He wasn't questioning, he was asking for an indication of how it's going to happen. And Hashem says, if you ask, I'll explain, and it won't be good. This is an important yesod that the Sforno speaks about in many, many places throughout Kol HaTorah Kula. Most notably is in Sefer Vayikra in Parshas Bahar. In order to understand this, and this is a little trippy, like this is gonna, I hope, keep you up at night. It should. Vayikra is not there. Where do we have a Vayikra? I think this is just English thing.
Could we have tzedakah be a play on, instead of meaning tzedakah charity, could it mean, tzadok? Right?
Yeah, righteous, correct. That's exactly what it said. Okay, so we'll say outside. But nevertheless, the pasuk says Parshas Bahar as follows. And we're not going to go through the whole thing, just because, in the interest of time, and also not to get too confused. But at the beginning of Parashas Bahar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu discusses the halachas of Shemitah. And there are a number of halachas of Shemitah that are mentioned. The first is that every 7 years there's going to be a year of Shemitah, says the pasuk. It'll be a year of rest for you, your maidservants, etc. And for your animals and for your your beasts that are in your field. Everybody can come and eat whatever they want. The year of Shemitah, you don't plow, you don't reap, you don't sow, you leave the land. Everybody is a year of agriculture. And then that's the halacha of Shemitah. And then the Torah tells you, now you're going to have halachas of Yovel. You have the Jubilee year. Every 50 years is going to be an additional year called Yovel. Right? All the land is going to go back. What?
The original people.
Yeah. V'safarta lecha sheva shabtai shanim sheva pamim v'ayu lecha yemei sheva shabtai hashanim teisha v'arbim shana. It's going to be 49 years, and then v'avarta shofar trua b'chodesh hashvi b'asar chodesh, and then you're going to blow the shofar. When do you blow the shofar in the Yovel year? Yom Kippur, right? And the Gemara is discussed, and the Gemara is nice, that on the Yom Kippur of Yovel, so shalom whether they had this in Beit Sheni or not, but in the Yom Kippur of Yovel, the Musaf of Yom Kippur of Yovel had both the Musaf, the davening of both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You had the three sections that we have in the Musaf that we have today of Malchus, Zichronos, and Shafaris, as well as the Yom Kippur Musaf. Very long Shemona Esrei. Take a long time to get through that Shemona Esrei.
And the athletics.
Because you're blowing the shofar.
No, why was the shofar blown?
So the pasuk says. It's the din of the pasuk, and the Rambam points out in this halacha l'maaseh. Today we have the mitzvah of shofar. The mitzvah is to listen to the shofar. The Yom Kippur of Yovel, the obligation is to sound the shofar. Everybody needs to know how to blow shofar. Yom Kippur of Yovel.
Does it say, like by Rosh Hashanah, it says Lishmoa Kol Shofar.
That's the bracha, right? But it's Yom Trua Yelachem. As opposed to, where the pasuk says, V'havarta shofar trua b'chodesh hashvi'i b'esar l'chodesh. It's a different lashon of the pasuk. Everybody needs to know how to blow shofar, so you should practice.
Do you keep track of the whole year still?
That's machlekes.
And so we're not sure which one where it is.
It's machlekes whether we count the. We know the shmitas, but it's a question of whether or not we count yovels when there's no yovel.
There's no yovel? What do you mean?
I mean, we don't have a yovel today.
If we have
Because-
Shemitah, why don't we do yoga?
Shmita is midrabanan
Okay.
today, and yovel you can only have if you have kol yeshve'ala, if you have the majority of the Jewish people living in Eretz Yisrael.
Hakel is when?
We're close.
Hakel is right right after is the sukkahs right after Shemitah. So good, but you need not just the majority of the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. You also need the Jewish people living in their ancestral homelands.
But if we're
Meaning you need
tribal.
You need Shevet Naphtali in the land of the Shevet Naphtali and Shevet Asher in the land of Shevet Asher.
So we have to take Jordan back?
It's basically
So
Mashiach.
wait, so we have to take over Jordan also, right?
Jordan and Lebanon and Syria. Yeah, we've got a lot still to do. We've got some work. We've got some work.
Who's
It's
in
okay.
Syria?
What?
Which tribal lands are in Syria?
Bibi. Bibi's in Syria,
There's
no?
a little bit of Syria. No one was paying attention.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that enough? How much Syria do we need to take?
It's a good shaila. It's a good shaila.
It's a
But
massive, right?
yeah.
But isn't,
We're acting.
Yeah.
doesn't this, in practicality, mean that this will only really happen until the time-
When Eliyahu comes and tells you what Shevet you're in, maybe, or DNA,
Oh.
maybe. By the way, it's possible. It would not surprise me if like Eliyahu shows up and goes like, all right, everybody line up and get a blood test. Right? Spit into this tube and done. Naphtali, Gad, Asher.
Why can't we do that now with our science and technology, and we'll get a DNA test and see where the markers line up?
You know,
That already happened.
Yeah, so kind of it's an interesting shadow, yeah.
You might have a 12 marker and you don't know who's who.
We're well past that.
Yeah. It'd be hard to figure out exactly who's who and what's what. But okay, no, Lemaisa, as technology progresses, we'll see what happens. Nevertheless, let's get back to this parsha and this svarna, because this is important to know. Says the svarna, it says the pasuk. Okay, so after we discuss all of the halachas of Shemitah, comes the halachas of Yovel. And then at the end of the parsha of Yovel is all of the halachas of buying and selling land in advance of Yovel, right? Meaning there's no such thing as land ownership. There is land leasing. You can only lease for up to 49 years. And then in the 50th year, it reverts back. So don't defraud everybody. And then we have the psukim of the redemption of the land.
Was whole home through Yovel or
No.
only through Shemitah?
Correct.
From Chad to Brad to Thad does not exist in Judaism.
There you go. And then are all the halachas of selling within a city, meaning the only place that you can own real estate beyond the Yovel is in a city, like an apartment in a city.
What about outside of Israel? Does it get?
No, no halachas of Yovel.
Oh.
All this stuff is like, nothing in Judaism like this type of stuff is all Israeli land.
No, not necessarily. There's challah exists, for example, outside of challah and orla, the two mitzvahs of that are
But the
Hilchos Eretz Yisrael, but those halachas apply outside.
Why is an apartment in the city?
That's the halachas of Beis Moshe, not for now. Okay. And then the psukim get then you have all the halachas of the cities of Levium, etc., etc. In the middle of this whole thing, after discussing the halachas of Shemitah and the halachas of Yovel, says the pasuk as follows: V'chi tamru, and should you say, Ma nochal b'shana hashvius? What will we eat in the 7th year? Hein lo nizra v'lo ne'asaf es tvaseinu. behold, we are not planting and we are not gathering our crops. Like, if you ask the question, what are we going to eat? Says the pasuk, Hashem promises, "V'tzivisi es birkasi lachem b'shana hashishis." I will command my bracha for you in the 6th year. V'asasas hatvua l'shlosh hashanim, and I will make the crops for 3 years, meaning you will have 3 times the amount of crops.
Because the third year, he also first
Right.
planted it, so
Meaning you're going to need, basically every year you plant and then you gather in your crops and then you divide up what are we using for seed for next year and what are we using to eat for this year. But if you're not going to plant next year, so then how are you going to have food for next year and the year after? So you need 3 times the amount in order to have 1 year off. So the pasuk says, "V'tzivisi es birkasi," I will command my bracha, v'asasas hatvua l'shlosh hashanim, and you will have enough food to last 3 years. Uzratem es hashana hashminis, and you will be able to plant. You will have left over enough to plant in the 8th year, meaning the year after. Shemitah v'achaltem min hatvua yashan ad hashana shias, and you will be able to eat from the old crop all the way until the 9th year. Meaning the 7th year, you will have what to eat from the 6th year, and that will last you for the 6th, 7th, and 8th year. Until the new crop comes in by year number 9, you will have enough to eat. Ad bait v'asa techlu yashan, until you have enough food to eat, you will be able to eat from the old grain. Va'aretz lo timacher litzmisus, and then back to, and you will not be able to sell your land indefinitely. Ki legal aretz, the whole land belongs to me. Asks the Sforno the ever important question here. Pasuk preferences this with v'chi samru ma nechal b'shana hashvius. Should you say, what will we eat in the 7th year? What if you don't say that? Meaning, if you would say, what are we going to eat in the 7th year? With tzivisi birkasi, then I will command my bracha. What if you don't say that? What if you don't ask the question? Then you don't get the bracha?
it's just a question you have to ask the first time because they have no idea what it's
Right.
It seems like an obvious question.
Right,
They're not gonna plant anything in 7th year. Oh, so what am I gonna eat?
right.
Maybe mom.
So,
Once you get past that first cycle,
It's an answer.
you don't have to ask it again. You've already found out what.
but what does that mean? Should you ask? What?
Oh, should you?
Meaning, if you would ask, v'chi samru, and should you ask, what will we eat? But tzivisi
Because
birkasi.
it's like,
If you
You
had
don't
no
have
problem, then you
full
wouldn't be
faith.
asking.
right.
Okay, so meaning,
You're gonna
is that a good thing that you're asking or not a good thing?
It's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing. But
You should trust.
if it's a bad thing that you're asking, so then how come that's rewarded with v'tzivisi birkasi? That I'll give you my bracha.
Because it's not necessarily a foolish thing to ask either.
Right, not a
It's
foolish thing.
legitimate question.
100%.
You can have bitachon and still ask a legitimate question.
Right.
Like,
Could you
what if the
like
light doesn't turn red and I
Yes.
cross and I have bitachon? Does that mean I don't have to look?
100%. It's a good question, right?
Could you still do shechita like during these years?
Yeah, you can eat.
It's just the land. It's
Yeah,
not like
you-
meat consumption.
Yeah, you can eat. You can eat cow,
The
chicken,
meat
whatever you
industry
want.
is good.
people are doing shemitah in Israel now, right?
Yes.
So do they get 3 times the amount?
So today's Shemitah is midrabanan, and that's an important question, but we'll get there in a second. Hold on. Yeah.
But I also think it's like you're asking that the asking itself might imply the opposite of what we're saying. It might actually be a good thing. Because think about how obvious this is. You can't do anything with land. And then you're asking, how are we gonna get anything from it? Like it's so obvious that I think you're acknowledging Hashem is gonna do something.
But it's a
For
question
you.
for. If it was a statement, it'd be good. I think it's
True.
a question format.
I mean, the language of the pasuk is v'chi samru, and if you would say, "What will we eat?"
Is v'chi and if or and
Yes.
when?
Hashem or is Moshe saying this?
Hashem.
Hashem.
This is Hashem. V'chi samru, and
Right, so if you don't,
Moshe.
yeah, meaning to tell the Jewish people, this is what you're going to tell them.
Say that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Vaydaber Hashem Moshe ba'ar Sinai lemar, and then daber al bnei Yisrael. Say all of this.
V'chi and when you will say? It's not and if. Is it an if or is it and when you will say?
It's a good question, but the question that the Sforno is going to ask is, why doesn't the Torah just tell you? V'tzivisi es birkasi.
Right. Instead of
Right.
Meaning, why pose it as a question, as a statement?
Part of the schar mitzvah is taking that route to ask the question and then getting an answer also.
So I'll share with you, and this Svarna should keep you up at night.
Maybe at some point in time, they will happen.
So he says like this. V'chisamru manechal, and should you say, what will we eat? Kasher. Yisupak ze etzlechem. When this will be doubtful by you, meaning when you will question, how is this going to work? V'lo yisivtechu, and you will not trust. Sheyeh ha'me'at maspik be'echuso. That which you have produced, the little that you have produced, will be enough qualitatively. Meaning, there are two ways for a person to have enough food. Option number one is that you have 3 times the amount of food. Option number two is that your food will be 3 times as nutritious. Where is the bracha going to be? Is the bracha going to be in quality or in quantity? That's the question here. Hashem says, keep Shemitah. Do you understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to die? Yes. What's the problem? Is that when you see in year number 6 that you have the same 150 kilos of seed at the end of your harvest season. So you look at this and say, how are we going to live on this for the next 3 years? So when you understand that of X amount of food that you produce, some of it is garbage, some of it gets eaten by rats, some of it is rotten, some of it is not nutritious, you don't actually ever get the full 150 kilograms of seed. Some of it goes to waste. Some of it is garbage, some of it is not nutritious, some of it's not healthy, some of it rots. There are 2 ways of the bracha working. Option number 1 of the bracha working is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of this for you in a way that everybody will have exactly as much as they need to eat. Option number 2 is you will have 3 times more food, which means you will spend 3 times more working. You will need to build 3 times more storehouses, and you will be 3 times more nervous for the next 3 years. Because now you have more. Right? You have more things to be worried about. You're going to have to hire more guards and hire more sharecroppers and hire more people to... Right? Alternatively, this will be enough. Those are the options. Says the Sforno, if you ask, I don't want you to die, but I'll take care of you. It's just a question of how. Do you need to see it? Or do you need to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of it? If you need to see it, Hashem says, I'll show it to you. But there's a cost involved with needing to see it. And if you don't need to see it, so then understand that you will have 3 times more time to spend with your family and with your friends and in the Beis Medrash. Those are your options here. Hashem says you have the question, you're entitled to the question. It's not a bad question. But if you don't have the question, v'yachshaveh lo tzedakah, and Hashem goes, Chashem, I'll take care of that. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells you it'll work, it'll work. That's called emunah and bitachon. Now, back to what's going on in the Sefer Shmos. Says the Sforno as follows: V'lo shomu el Moshe, they didn't listen to Moshe. Lizbanin b'chol zeh, to introspect, to understand what is going on here. They couldn't imagine what it would look like to be I'll bring you to the land of Israel. You're going to become a sovereign nation, a land in a land of your own, with your own language, with your own culture, with your own art, and with your own sciences, and with your own ability to take center stage in world history. They couldn't think about that. so that they would be convinced in what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling them, v'yachshaveh lahem tzedakah, and it would be like, psst, look at that, they chap. They might not know how to get from here to there, but do they believe it'll work? Yes. That doesn't require an understanding of how. It's simply a capacity to hear that it will happen and to say, if Hashem says it'll happen, it'll happen. It says, V'chein, and therefore, lo niskayim bahem, v'nasati osat lachem, aval nasnat libnehem. And therefore, they never entered Eretz Yisrael. It was given to their children instead. Meaning, were it to be that the Jewish people would have, you asked the question, what was the difference that they didn't listen to Moshe? Says this friend, I'll tell you exactly what the difference was. Because they didn't listen to Moshe, they didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. Because they couldn't imagine it. If they would have stopped for a moment to think that it would happen, that it was going to happen.
And kind of like a poetic way, like Moshe didn't enter either.
Correct. And there's a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to say about why Moshe doesn't go, and that's not for now. But you're 100% right. But the point that the Sforno is making is that because they didn't listen, because they couldn't listen, because they couldn't stop to think, because it was so inconceivable. That dream was so out of reach for them. They couldn't imagine it. Then they couldn't think about it. And because they couldn't think about it, it didn't happen to them.
Is that really something they should be blamed for? I mean, they spent 200 years.
It's not a question of blame. It's just a reality.
The same argument with Moshe, right? Moshe couldn't go into Israel.
Right.
He wasn't the right.
Whether this is punishment, it's just reality. The point is that what the Sforno is telling us is that the haftachas of Geula and of Yeshua are things that we need to believe in, whether or not we see the process. Meaning, when I'll be very blunt. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us that we will have Geula and that we will have the entirety of Eretz Yisrael and we will rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, there is nobody around this table, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody in the world that knows how we're going to get from where we are now to there. And the reason that you know that there's nobody that knows how to do this is because if there was, they would already be the prime minister. Right?
And it'd be done.
Where do you draw the line between Ein Somchen Al Hanes and Bitachon?
So this isn't requiring you to do anything. That's the point. The question about Ein Somchen Al Hanes means don't do something stupid, relying on a miracle. This is simply a question to think about it. To introspect, to reflect, to understand that Hashem is saying that it is going to happen. Conjure in your mind that image of Geula.
It's telling you a dream.
Correct. And the Sforno is saying they didn't. And since they didn't, it didn't happen for them. And since Avraham Avinu, when Hashem says to him, I am going to have you will have a son, and Avraham Avinu in his mind is imagining him with a baby, Hashem goes, Mwah, tzedakah. Meaning, that's the tzedakah. That's the schus for Avraham. So Hashem says it's going to happen, and Avraham imagines that it's happening.
But Sarah was just the opposite.
It's a good shot, my Sarah, not for now. That's what's the tzchoik of Sarah? That's a good shot. But the point that the Sforno makes later, in Avram imagines having Eretz Yisrael and then asks, but how am I going to get there? Hashem says, you ask? So now explain. You ask, I have to explain it to you because you asked. It's a good question. And if you ask the question, then you get an answer, but it's not a nice answer. This is the same as the point of, if you'd say, what are we going to eat? I'll tell you how you'll eat. Meaning, if you need to see it. If you need to see it, I'll tell you. But if you want me to handle it, I can handle it without you having to see it.
What if the root of the question stems from someone asking, what do you want me to do to get there? As opposed to... That's
different.
It's a different sense of, I believe it, but okay, what am I supposed to do next? I don't know which way to turn.
100%. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not telling us in any of these places that we need to do anything. This was simply Moshe Rabbeinu is being told, go and tell the Jewish people, you're going to get out of Egypt and you're going to become a sovereign nation and you're going to be Hashem's people. And they're like, not interested. So they didn't become those people.
So if Avram didn't ask, maybe we wouldn't have ended up in
100%. That is exactly what this Sforno says. If Avram wouldn't have asked B'mei Edah Ki Rishana, and the point is this, is that question has plagued the Jewish people from the days of Avram Avinu until today. Avram Avinu is given two promises. One, you will have children. Never, ever, ever in Jewish history have the Jewish people ever asked the question of how will we have more children? We've had more children. We never asked the question about whether or not the Jewish people will survive for another generation. We always have known that the Jewish people, meaning that emunah is within us. But ownership of the land of Israel, ad hayom hazeh, is still plaguing us. But how are we going to do it? We haven't resolved that question yet. And the answer to that question is, it's irrelevant. You just need to know that it belongs to you. It's yours. How? Oh, whatever. That's not important. It's not important. The how is not important. You do what you have to do. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of the rest. Meaning, Hashem says to Abraham, you're going to have a child. I'm not going to have a child. Just keep on doing whatever you're doing. You'll have a child. You're going to inherit the Eretz Yisrael. How? I don't know. Keep doing what you're doing. You have a child. Keep doing what you're doing. You inherit Eretz Yisrael. Haraya. I'll give you. We spoke about Syria. If somebody would have said to you a year and a half ago that Assad's regime would collapse and that Tzahal would be on the other side of the Hermon, you'd say, how's that going to happen? And the answer is, you have no idea. You have no idea. Right. Can HaKadosh Baruch Hu make it happen? Of course he can make it happen. And then post facto, everybody can now, Monday morning quarterback how it all happened. Russia is fighting with Ukraine, and therefore they couldn't say it. And because Hezbollah was busy with the war, all of a sudden, okay, because. Right? And at whatever point in time, there's no more Hamas in Gaza, but Hashem Baruch it should be B'meir B'yameinu. Everybody's going to say, how's it going to happen? How's it going to happen? How's it going to happen that there's no, that Hamas, all of this Israeli community is like, I don't understand. They come out of these little tunnels looking like Ninja Turtles. It's right. How are we going to get rid of them? How are we going to get rid of the Ninja Turtles? But I don't know. But can HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Of course he can. Will we be in Gaza? Yes. And in the West Bank? Yes. Will it be known throughout the world as Yehuda v'Shomron? Yes. Will we rebuild the Beis Hamikdash? Yes. How? I don't know. It's not important. It's not important. But that's the point. The how is not important. The what is important. Because the why is important. The methodology is however HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be. That's the Nakuda here. Meaning the goal is go and convince the Jewish people that there is a thing that they need to be dreaming about. And we have been struggling with dreaming that dream for a very long time. Since Mitzrayim. Since Avram Avinu. What does it look like to have Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel? Just imagine it. Not the how we're going to get there, but what does that look like? What's the point of being there? That question is something that we have struggled with. Hashem Yisbarach, to be continued next week.